Joining me today are neighbors and more recently friends, Nick and Kathy Giuffre. Nick and Kathy's daughter and son knew our son Nick, and during high school would drive him to school each day. It wasn't until Nick's passing that we would become friends. They reached out to support us and more recently participated on our fundraising committee for this year's past event. They are here today to discuss how addiction has affected them and their own family. Nick and Kathy, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you here with us today, and you're quite brave to do this, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
That's just great. Could we start by just maybe sharing a little bit about your family? I know you guys have a great family, and perhaps you can just shine some light on your family.
Yeah, our family is, we have 4 children, and we've lived in Westchester, and you would think perfectly normal family, and then this horrible disease kind of reared its head, and the last 10 years, I think we'd say, has been, a long road.
Right,
but,
right.
It's all good right now.
So that's great. Well, how did you realize that there was a problem with addiction in your family? What was the turning point, or what did you think? How did that happen?
I guess our one son, during high school, started experimenting with drugs and alcohol, and that was the beginning of it. And underage drinking, and which led to knowing the after-school program that they offer for that kind of problem at the high school level. And then we went through college, halfway through college, and we realized, we were told that opioids were now the big problem in his life, and that's when, everything came to, the full head, and we figured out, something has to be done.
So it wasn't until those college days. So before that, the marijuana and unfortunately the alcohol, which is just so common with
Correct.
our youth, he was partaking in. Did you see that there was any kind of excessive use during that high school time? Or no, was there any alarms at that point when he was in high school? There was a problem?
Well, I don't know. What do you think?
I thought there was. I think in retrospect, I'm going to take it back to maybe when he was 12 years old. He had an issue with eating. All of a sudden, he didn't want to eat, and we took him to a therapist, and he had a discussion one-on-one with a therapist, and the therapist came out and then talked to both of us, and he says, "Your son's going to struggle with alcohol and drugs. You better keep a close eye on him." I thought the man was insane. I'm like, "You talked to my son for 20 minutes. What? How could you? How could you say this?" And so, I remember the conversation like it was yesterday, but didn't absorb it, didn't understand it, didn't really realize what addiction is and how many addictions there are. So we just kind of kept a close eye on him, and then he changed. He gradually went back to eating. And then I kind of noticed when he quit playing sports, team sports, he got a whole new group of friends.
Okay.
They were skateboarding friends.
Okay.
And it's funny, you look at that, and there's stereotypes for everything.
Sure,
but, I looked at them and going, they're not the normal kind of base friends that we knew of.
Right.
But we drive them there, and my mind was like, well, it is exercising, it's skateboarding,
Right. Sure.
but you're just really dropping them off at the park and you're leaving them alone.
Right.
And you're
No
not
coaches.
aware, you're not asking the right questions, but I did notice that there was a change, in his friends, and then it gravitated into a lot more challenge of authority.
Okay.
And then it became a school problem. The teachers were a problem. Everything was a problem. Life was a problem. We were a problem. The government was a problem. It was just like, wow. But again, I think as parents, I've heard in the last couple of years, 2-3 years, and I heard a person say, you don't know what you don't know. I'm like, that's a goofy kind of statement, but it's so true.
Right.
You don't
It's
know
so
what
true.
you don't know.
Right.
We didn't know.
Right.
We didn't know how to parent a troublesome child. You
Right.
know, because, you know, we came from a generation that was more dictatorship. You they
You're
said
right.
that, you did
You're
this.
right. Absolutely.
And I really struggle with all
Absolutely.
the, you know, with all the kids. I'm
Right.
like, how could you say no? You know, you're not supposed to say no. We didn't say no.
Exactly.
And so as the parenting changes for the, you know, the evolution of children changing and social media and
yes.
texting,
Oh,
none of that was in our lives.
Right.
You know, at
Right.
our ages. And so
Absolutely.
now, you know, they're vehicles, they're getting information everywhere. And we have no idea where it's coming from,
Right.
how it's filtered. We didn't
Exactly.
understand the internet, the impact of social media.
Sure.
I mean,
Absolutely.
even before Twitter, there was something else.
Right.
And
Right.
we didn't understand.
Right.
And we didn't know. And honestly, as parents, well, certainly me, I was tied up, you know, not only with my work, but with my own social pleasure. You know, this misbehavior was an interruption to my
Right.
drinking.
Right.
And I didn't like to be interrupted. You know?
Right.
So it was just like, you know, go do this and behave yourself, will you?
Right.
And don't interrupt our social lives.
Sure. Sure.
And so,
Sure.
you know, it's so hard to do this going backwards. But one of the reasons we wanted to come here today, and thank you, you know, for inviting us and for everything you're doing for the community in honor of Nick and your family, is this has to be shared.
Right.
You know, this has to be shared. The frustration, the fear, the lack of knowledge. There's
Right.
just so much, and if you can just get a piece out of this,
Right.
you know, that
Absolutely.
might help you. And so,
Absolutely.
as hesitant as we were,
Right.
we felt that we've had enough experience now.
Sure.
Going in and out of rehabs and
Right.
and other things like that, that maybe there'd be a couple tidbits that we could share with you.
Right. Well, that's
So
wonderful.
that's-
And I'm
that's
so
something I
pleased.
think
But,
about.
but going back a little bit, when your son was younger, and it was marijuana, it was alcohol, and was there any sense of denial? Did you feel maybe because there was a lack of understanding that there was like a denial, like not my kid? This, or were you pretty?
I just
Felt
felt like,
open.
you know, right now, you know, all kids are doing this. Everybody experiments
Exactly.
with marijuana. Everybody experiments with
Exactly.
alcohol. So he's just being a typical kid, you know,
Right.
never thinking it was going to go beyond that or become a problem.
Sure.
You know,
Sure.
so we didn't think too much of it at the time. I
Right.
mean, we knew he was probably a little young to get started because we were thinking we had
Right.
at least till junior in high school. But now it's going younger and younger. Now it's starting
Sure.
in middle school.
Absolutely.
You know, he was like wanting to have parties in 7th and 8th grade at our house. You know, but we didn't know any better. We were like, oh, he's being social. So
Right.
we didn't know what was going on at that time. But like now we know, looking back.
Sure, sure. But and to your point, Nick, it's true. Like we didn't have all these vehicles of social network and social media, and we didn't, you know, we didn't know what to look for in that arena because there was so much.
And as parents, you make the mistake of you go back to your time with marijuana, or maybe your time, and think, you know what, it's a rite of passage, you know. And you know, a big parental mistake is you want to be their friend, and you want to be their buddy, and you want their buddies to like you and say, hey, that Mr. G, he's
Pretty
all right,
cool.
you
Yeah.
know. And you know,
Sure.
but you know, you allow things that you now know shouldn't have been allowed. And
Exactly.
they all, you know, we've learned a lot from Chris Herron, you know, with
Right.
an amazing story. And the
Sure.
most prolific thing he said was right from the get-go. It started in your basement.
Exactly.
And that's exactly where it started with us. My mindset was, well, if they didn't drive,
Right.
okay, I did my job as a parent. You know, if they were staying over, you know, and that would mean that it wouldn't interrupt my social time. I wouldn't have to drive anyone home. They could stay, you know, in the basement, and you know,
They're safe.
huge mistake.
Right. They're
Huge
safe.
mistake.
They're here. They're safe.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
interesting because, you know, if my kids didn't have parties, they wouldn't, all their buddies wouldn't come to my house because I wouldn't allow, you know, the party. So they would go someplace else. And hey, everybody has their own philosophies when it comes to parenting. And like you said, we can go back and I should have done this, or why didn't I do that, or how did this happen? And you do the best that you can.
Yeah.
I feel like, we all did the best that we could with all of our
we don't know,
children.
marijuana is a lot different today than it was
yeah.
then.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
again, you think of your own experience with things, and okay, they'll grow up, they'll get out of it, and you just, it just didn't seem to be something to worry about. And,
Sure,
but
sure. Can you tell us a little bit about how the addiction impacted your family, like every member of the family? You, your children, all your children. I mean, how you had issues with one child with substance abuse, but how did that affect the dynamics, like let's say the dynamics of your family? Can you share anything about that? The siblings, how they responded?
Well, it takes a toll on everybody. They're scared. They're hurt. Then our life focus is on the one with the addiction, and no matter how much you try, this person with the addiction is getting the limelight, all the attention, and the other ones are, we don't know this at the time because you're in such a state of panic, but they're falling by the wayside basically and living in the shadows of all this. So, but at the time, it's like sink or swim. You're going down the rabbit hole and you don't know which way to do. So all you can do is focus on that child.
Right.
I mean, and trying to do, save their lives at this point. But yeah, they've all been affected, and it all comes out in different ways, shapes, size, and forms.
Absolutely.
It affected us too. I mean, I know we had to be on the same page on how to handle situations, and that's a big thing for, I know, a lot of couples, is that they're not on the same page, and that causes a lot of conflict between the husband and wife. And if you're not on the same page, the child will pick up on that. So we went to a family therapist who we got us on the same page, which was a huge help in going forward. And then our child knew that he couldn't use one of us against the other.
Right. If he didn't get something from you, go to dad, and that's so common. It's so common with kids. They're so smart. They are really smart in getting what they want. Right.
I would think that, the oldest had frustration, because he's the oldest. The other child was close in age, so there was a bond there, and that just became fear. And the youngest was more avoidance. So they all suffered in many ways, and and they really couldn't share. I don't know if they shared amongst themselves,
Sure.
but we didn't realize they probably all could have used some help. And we just didn't know.
Right.
And they can work one versus the other, because
Sure.
we didn't know. I know one of your shows you talked about how did you know.
Right.
I didn't know. I looked at it as misbehavior. I
Right.
didn't know a sign. And he was away. So when this all happened, when the really bad addiction started in college, he was away.
Right.
So we didn't see it.
Sure.
So we didn't know it. And,
Right.
So it was, you talk on the phone, okay, it seems okay.
Right.
Review classes, what's going on.
Right.
But, we didn't have a clue.
And when did you find out, or how did it occur that you realized
It was
that he was
during
having
Christmas
problems?
break. It was
Okay.
during a Christmas break, and the girl that he was seeing, his girlfriend, reached out to Kath.
Yeah, that was back like in October. School had just started, and she called me at the end of September and October, and she said, I told him, you have to call your mom and tell her that you're hooked on these pills, or we can't go on. So that's when he called me, and that's when I went down, and I found a doctor down there and somebody that he could see on campus
Okay.
to help him. However, they subscribe Suboxone down on campus,
Okay.
and then that gets misabused. So we thought he kind of had this. We had no idea it was going to be like a lifelong struggle. But we're thinking, okay, he's not going to use. He's doing what they're telling you. Well, that was a forest.
Oh wow. How did he get a hold of pills? Was it Oxy? Was it?
Yeah,
what was
Oxys
it?
and
What was-
Xanax were the.
Percocet, think it started with Percocet.
And how
And
did you,
Xanax.
do you know how he accessed them?
On the streets.
On the streets.
Yeah. He was in the city streets. So,
You can get them from anybody, anywhere.
That's what people need to know. That's what
Yes.
families, I think,
It's on
need to know.
campus. I mean, they buy them off their friends. You know, here, take this, kind of thing.
Now, do they? And I've heard of like pill parties where they'll go and show up and kids have robbed their parents' medicine cabinets and put all these pills in a bowl and. You know, supposedly it's a party, and it's
and the doctors, you know,
serious.
there was a lot of injuries. There's a lot of athletes who had injuries,
Right.
and those injuries were treated mistakenly with opioids, and then there would some would be left, and it's just
and they would sell them. I mean, I
incredible.
know of upwards to like $30 a piece.
So $30 a pill.
That's what he was paying.
Right.
That's what he was.
Well, I remember when they were in high school, I would hear them talk about Xanny bars. And I'm like, which is a Xanax, right? A lot of Xanax of some sort. I don't even know myself, but you know, it's all connected. The two were like the cocktail was Perks with the Xannies together,
Wow.
which is lethal. Well, any of it's lethal.
Any of it's lethal. Absolutely. Well, besides your immediate family, did you share? Or let me go back to this. Let me ask this because we're on this page. When you did realize, and he went with the Suboxone regimen. And you said that wasn't successful.
Well, go ahead.
No, it wasn't successful, or it was for a short time.
No, it was never successful. Not at the way they weren't monitoring him. That's usually it's very monitored as far as
Right.
it wasn't.
Okay.
So
it wasn't long before.
He was back for Christmas break, and he was not well. But we didn't know the extent of it.
Okay.
And then finally, I told him he wasn't allowed back to college. He was too sick to go back to college. And I says, your choice is a rehab. And we didn't know a lot about, where to send him. And so we checked with some insurance companies. It would have been nice if we knew that the parents' meetings that we know of now.
Sure.
If all we would have had to do was go in that one room one Tuesday night, and we would have got a lot more answers. But we didn't. We didn't know there was a meeting with that. So I just did some insurance research because it was more about, what places can you send somebody that would be covered by insurance?
Sure.
And we found Father Martin's Ashley.
Okay.
And in February of that year, he went down.
Well,
he went, to Father Martin's Ashley.
well, he didn't go willingly. It was like
Many
tough.
of them don't.
It was like tough love.
Okay.
You can't live here.
Okay. And you weren't sending him back to college?
No.
You refused that second semester, apparently. Right. So you were pretty much holding his feet to the fire. Yeah. And was he under 21 at the time, or 18?
Yeah.
No, he wasn't. He was over
20?
18.
Was he 20?
Yeah.
20. Okay, but he's still, if he's over 18,
Correct.
he
And
doesn't
that's
have
one
to
thing
go.
we have
That's
to
another thing.
That's another thing we want to realize. Once he's 18, he had such behavioral issues that we had another idea in high school to go to a place that would help with that. But he was allowed, to walk out on his 18th birthday in 1 hour. So there's just some things you just don't know. But
Say, see you later.
Once they're 18,
That's
it's pretty much it.
Yep.
But we did get him into Father Martin's Ashley, which is and then when you had parents' time, when they had a family session,
Right.
and we were able to bring the family down, then we started getting a little inkling into how deeply serious this is.
Right.
We didn't have a lot of neighbors or friends or family that we knew of, that were, suffering with this problem, because there's a shame attached to it for sure. So no one's going to share, hey, I'm in the same boat you are. You get the sympathy look, but, there's no one saying, or you might say, geez, that happened to my nephew or something, but
Right.
it really wasn't anyone to talk to.
Right.
So you went there and you went for the family session, and you learned how bad the damage is done to the brain of a 20-year-old, and how much marijuana going back to when they were 15.
Right.
What was so bad, and you didn't realize that the brain isn't developed until 25.
Right.
And so when they start partying at 15 or 16, it stops then. And so there's not growth. There's not
Right.
growth. So your decision making
Right.
is seriously impacted.
Absolutely.
And so you're making poor decisions. But we were certainly I was of the impression 28 days. Done.
Uh-huh.
This
Right. This is it.
This will be it.
This'll be it.
My
We're
boy will
good.
be back. Everything will be
Right.
good.
Uh-huh.
And life
goes on.
Life will be good. And during that
Right.
time, that's why I want to share it, so the other parents can hear that. They had suggested that he go to a program like a halfway home.
Recovery
A
community.
recovery
Right.
Or extended program, right.
to that, to a
Right.
second, almost
Sure.
second stage. And he was, no way, no absolute way, I'll walk out of here. So,
Yes.
again, we acquiesced where we shouldn't. We should have just held the line, say, don't come home. But I couldn't wait to pick him up and buy him a steak dinner. You did your 28 years, so 28 days. I'm so
right.
proud of you.
Sure.
That kind of thing.
Sure.
And certainly, we learned a lot, but we learned nothing.
There you go. There you go. I know.
We learned nothing. And shortly after, I don't know if it was within the week, he was, out of Father Martin Ashley, he was back. So if you're a parent, and the counselors say, okay, he needs or she needs to go further.
Right.
You have to support that.
Right.
Yeah, and no matter all the fighting, kicking, screaming, whatever it takes, and that's what Kathy means by being on the same page.
And the other thing you asked about is about did we share this with anybody or family and friends?
Right.
Like, I told everybody. I was the opposite. I told everybody I knew because that's the way I network.
Right.
And that's how I found out about the parent support group because I told enough people. Someone finally said, "Oh, my friend's son or daughter, they go here for the support," and that's where I found out by telling because everybody you tell knows somebody
Right.
that's having this same predicament going on, so facing the same disease. So I told everybody I knew, and that's how I've always found out, like, who to go see, the therapist, the support groups, the rehab. Like, I just had to reach out because I had no other way of finding out.
Well, I give you a lot of credit, Kathy, because, like you, Nick, there's this stigma, and we could talk about that as well. There's this stigma, there's this shame, embarrassment. All that goes along with, what did I do wrong? And, we didn't talk to anybody outside of our family. I mean, outside of our house. I wasn't having dinner with friends and saying, oh yeah, our son is struggling with addiction. We just didn't do those conversations. And, looking back, maybe that would have made a difference. We'll never know, but I mean, I applaud you for that.
I don't know if it's good or
do.
bad of airing. They say I'm airing out my dirty laundry. I'm like, yeah, but that's how I find out where I need to go for help because I don't know where else to go.
But you didn't feel that way in the beginning.
No, certainly in the beginning it was, we'll handle this. We have this.
It's a
We can,
family matter.
we can, and I struggled with other people's stories because they're other people's stories. What's that got to do with my story?
Right.
Or what's that do with my kid? Or do they have as many kids as we have?
Right.
I spent more time comparing than listening. And until I got into rooms with other parents, and and listen to them, you find things that resonate with you.
Then we would listen to the other parents, and they'd be like, "Oh, years! Like I'll be here for 4 years," and we were like, "Wait, what do you mean this isn't going to be resolved in 6 months?"
Right. You think, like you said, to your point, it's 28 days, and we're, this is good. We got this, and we'll move on. And I can relate. I can definitely relate to that. And then when you hear years, like what?
And it was, in all honesty, it was an interruption to our social life, or to mine for sure. It's just, it was like, wow, this I can't drink in peace. And then so you have that part. You're trying to live your life. You have your other children. And then the biggest thing for parents is the frustration. So frustrated. You couldn't write a check to fix it.
Right.
And you couldn't really do anything about it. and you don't understand it. And you know, the reality, you know, my true reality was until I looked at myself. You know, you can't help somebody until yourself is healed. And I made a decision almost 3 years ago, you know, that the social life and the alcohol had to stop.
Okay.
You know, we're still somewhat social, you know, but our life has changed dramatically.
That's
You know,
wonderful.
our life has changed dramatically, and
For the better.
and yeah, it's difficult. You know, you were one way for 42 years,
Right.
and that's what you get to know. And now you're another way,
Right.
and you know, so those type kind of things I couldn't understand because I was all wrapped up, you know, into me. So how
Right.
could I understand, you know, what he's going through?
Sure.
But you know,
Sure.
it's a frustrating thing. I mean, it's not just Father Martin Ashley. We can keep popping off
Sure.
all the other
Oh,
places he went to.
absolutely.
It's not like we
Absolutely.
didn't keep trying.
No, no.
And you know, he just wasn't. He wasn't ready.
He
and-
wasn't ready.
yeah,
He wasn't ready.
yeah,
He wasn't ready.
Wasn't ready.
That's the bottom line.
And
They
you know,
have to be ready.
that's the toughest thing.
Yep.
I mean, they're great places. They
Sure,
really are.
they
I mean,
are.
they work
Fabulous.
really hard at doing what they do. But you know,
You have to have a
it's gotta-
willing participant.
Right. It's got
Right.
to be you.
Exactly.
And something, you know,
Exactly.
there many times he was success for months and months, and then
Right.
something would trigger it. You know,
Exactly.
something would, you know,
Yeah.
would trigger it, and then you know, back to the drawing board.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, you know, for parents, we don't want to be the prophets of doom,
Sure.
but it's you gotta.
It's long.
It's a journey.
long journey.
It's a journey, and with you that you're not alone. What a great topic, because
Right.
you need help.
Absolutely.
You need help.
So where is everything today? And we'll with your son and his sobriety. How's he doing now?
He's doing great. He's 8 months sober
Fabulous.
and working full time and
Great.
moved into his own apartment with another great sober, you know, roommate.
right.
And it's, you know, you just have to build your life around, you know, that's your purpose in life is to
Exactly.
stay clean and sober.
Absolutely.
And like Nick had said, you know, I'll be sober I was sober 3 years in October, and our life's, you know, way different. We're still social, we're still, you know, but we're out there, and
Good.
it's
That's
good
great.
for our house. It's good for our
Fabulous.
family.
Good. That's wonderful. Well, I want to congratulate you both and thank you so much for coming on our show. It's really been wonderful to have you both. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for joining us for this important discussion. My name is Brenda Schivito, and remember, there is no need to suffer in silence. You are not alone. See you next time.